Are we on? Good evening. Welcome to Karma Yoga. We're on the 25th class of studying Swami Vivekananda's seminal text, Karma Yoga, the yoga of work, how to attain freedom through work. And as I've mentioned before, we're reading the unauthorized edition, the unedited edition. As you may recall, the transcripts of the classes, which were taken down in New York City by Goodwin, Swamiji's disciple and stenographer, those were sent to England for the study of Sturdy and his group there, and he immediately turned around and published them, unedited. So we have this amazing text which is full of the life of Swami Vivekananda's direct speech, how he would actually speak with his students. And he wanted it to be edited, so the book Karma Yoga is a more polished book, which is also appropriate, and it's wonderful, but we're going through the original language, and we get this freshness of Swami Vivekananda's language. So we start with our chant. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitam astu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we be protected together. May we be nourished together. May we acquire strength together. May our learning shine forth in our lives. May we not find fault with one another. Om, peace, peace, peace. So we begin our study with this beautiful prayer, that this may not be an intellectual exercise, actually, but that what we study may actually give us strength, that it may protect us, bring us strength, and may it manifest in our lives. So that's the idea behind the prayer. Let us take our minds back for a moment to Friday, January 10th, 1896, New York City, at 228 West 39th Street, in the morning. This is the last class Swami Vivekananda gave for the advanced students, the fourth class for advanced students in Karma Yoga. And that evening he would be giving the fourth class for beginner students. But this is the fourth class for advanced students called Freedom. And it would have been chilly. The temperature did not go above freezing on that day in New York, but we can imagine on the second floor of a brownstone, looking like all the other brownstones on the street. And it's a long, narrow room filled with people, and the steam pipes are clanking now and then as the furnace is going. And they might hear occasionally, though 39th Street was pretty quiet, but there would have been maybe some horse carriages going by with the cloppity-clop of the hoofs and all that. But nobody's listening to that. They're all listening to Swami Vivekananda as he pours out his whole soul in transmitting to his students the ideal of Karma Yoga. And this class on freedom, it's a long class, it's a long talk, and it's full of a lot of surprising and challenging ideas. And I think those of you who have attended the previous installments, you remember that he's talking a lot about vairagya, about non-attachment. How do we work without getting attached to it? Work entangles us. How do we make work instead a vehicle for untangling us from the messiness of this world and bring us to freedom, to overcome our tendency to selfishness, to appropriate everything to ourselves? And so he emphasizes again and again this idea of vairagya, or detachment, or also translated as renunciation, giving it up, and then holding ourselves and everything as just as a sacrifice, as an offering to the divine, so that everything we do is service to God. So let's see where we left off in last class. We left off where he is discussing this tendency of I and mine, this tendency of our minds to appropriate things to us. And we talked about how it's an interesting phenomenon maybe especially in California and Southern California, but really all over the world, how people get identified with their automobiles. Those of us who own automobiles, who own a car, we tend to feel like it's my car, and it starts to become an extension of ourselves. And if it gets damaged in an accident or something, then it creates a lot of mental pain because we're so identified with it. And this is actually a source of misery. And it's ridiculous to say, my car, and so Swamiji extends it. Not only this idea of my car is a mistake, which brings us to misery, but even this idea of my body is something which brings us misery. So he says, whenever you say, it is mine, misery will immediately come. So with everything. Do not even say, my child, in your mind. Enjoy the child, but do not say, mine. If you do, then will come the misery. Okay, I'm not sure how many of us present today actually have children. One. So you may be able to offer a good commentary on this question. Huh? What? Their child. So, Khalil Gibran, how did he put it? Your children are not your children. They're the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. In the Prophet, which is it has a lot of Vedanta in that text, and Sufism and mysticism and all of that. That's a beautiful text. Your children are not your children. So enjoy the child, but do not say mine. If you do, then will come the misery. Do not say my house. Do not say my body. The whole difficulty is there. My body. The body is neither yours nor mine, nor anyone's. These bodies are coming and going by law, but you are free, a standing witness. Okay, up to this we read last time, this idea that bodies come and go, we are the witness. As if we're seeing a book and that we're turning the pages of a book, and each page is another body, another lifetime, another round of this old wheel of smiles and tears. So he's in this karma yoga, he's constantly placing before us these two ideas: freedom and bondage, misery. Freedom and misery, freedom and bondage. And saying, when we become attached, when we become bound, we experience misery. And yet, paradoxically, our true nature is free. And karma yoga is, as all yoga, is a method, a practice for unveiling that freedom, for discovering that freedom, which is already there. Peeling off the layers of selfishness and ignorance and bondage and misidentification, and finding that, oh, I am eternally free. I am ever blissful. That is my own nature. So he's going to continue with this idea of the body. This body is no more free than a picture or a wall. Why should you attach yourself to a body? If someone paints a picture and afterwards passes away, why be attached to it? If someone paints a picture, he afterwards passes away, why be attached to it? Let it pass. Do not project that tentacle of selfishness, I will possess it. As soon as that is projected, misery will begin. And it's interesting how strong this tendency is. If we examine our minds, we see something nice, and what comes? I want that, isn't it? I want that. Maybe it's a good thing to eat, or maybe it's the latest device, the latest, newest model of phone or computer, or even operating system. You know, the fans of the Linux operating system, perhaps I know some of you are familiar with that. It's a free open source computer system developed by people all over the world, and it's free. It's free open source. It's released to the public, and people work. It's actually a kind of karma yoga. People work on it and offer it to humanity, and it's a very solid and good operating system. But I've known a number of people who are really into it, and they're constantly changing it. When the next latest edition comes out, they'll reconfigure their computer and install the newest edition of Linux. I gotta have it. I gotta have that. I must. This is what Swamiji's saying. This idea, I will possess it. I will possess it. So, the Karma Yoga says, first, destroy this power of projecting this tentacle of selfishness. And when you have the power of checking that, hold it in. Do not allow the mind to get into that sort of wave. Check it, and then go out into the world and work as much as you can. So he's suggesting, as we know from study of Raja Yoga, this idea that our thoughts are like waves in the lake of the mind. And when this wave of selfishness arrives, this wave of wanting to acquire, wanting to somehow hold on to something and have it for me without letting other people have it, it's like a tentacle. You could imagine like an octopus with all these tentacles reaching out and grabbing things. And all those suckers on the tentacles, they can easily grab and pull it back to ourselves. You know, that we were just talking about that the other day, about how kids at a certain age, Preeti, what age is it that they start showing unselfishness? Like up to a certain age, they'll just keep all the toys for themselves. Or 18 months, at about 18 months, young children apparently will start sharing their toys with other children. And if they don't start doing that, there's something wrong. And but that idea that, oh, it's mine, or, oh, I'll share it. So this unselfishness, we learn it from an early age, and yet, of course, all of us don't learn it, and we don't fully learn it, because we have both in us, this tremendous compassion, this tremendous wanting to share, to alleviate misery when we see it in others, and yet also this tendency, I want that for me. My bank balance should be big. All right, I'm ready to give something, but let my bank balance first be a little bit more, then I'll give something. Why be attached to it? Let it pass, he says. Why be attached to it? Do not project that tentacle of selfishness. I will possess it. I think it might be useful just to reflect a little on this idea of body, and because in these talks, Swamiji often hammers on this point that we are not the body, and give up the idea that you are the body. Well, then what? Do we just ignore it? Do we eat whatever we want and not worry about it? Do we not give the body any exercise? Maybe why should we even bathe? I'm not the body. Why should I wash the body then? What about that? Why should I go to a doctor?
In reference to your thought or your question, we are not the body, but we have responsibility to it. We have onus to it, because through this vehicle, we come to our understanding of these things, and we are able to utilize the vehicle to deepen that understanding. So to some degree, we do have a responsibility, as a driver does to its vehicle, to keep it operational.
Okay, nice. Swami Vivekananda may disagree with you a little bit later in this talk with the language of responsibility. And yet, look at Swami Vivekananda himself. He did take care of his body to a certain extent. And when he was sick, he went up into the mountains and took exercise and strengthened his body. And there's one letter that he writes to Mary Hale where he says, "A good amount of unnecessary adipose tissue has been reverted to the gaseous state." Because he used to put on weight, and especially in front. And we see when he was in New York living with Swami Kripananda, Leon Landsberg, and they would cook for themselves and eat very healthy. They were eating salads or vegetarian food, lentils, and what anyone remember what they were eating in New York? Sort of vague recollections. Anyway, they were cooking for themselves nuts and fruits and things like that. So Swami Vivekananda himself took care of his body. He had a message to give, and how is he going to give the message if the body is falling apart? So he had tremendous strength, and yet he also worked that body to death. So he left his body at age 39, and we hadn't reached 40. So, but yes, we have a body, and in the Vedantic idea, it's a very precious attainment to have a human body, because it's in a human body that we can attain spiritual progress. We can attain freedom, spiritual freedom. When we leave the body, perhaps we end up in some heavenly realm where it's very pleasant, and it's more difficult actually to make spiritual progress. It's here where we have this tremendous push and pull. On the one hand, we have this peace, and on the other hand, we have conflict, and we have happiness and misery. We have so much here, so much material to work with, so we can make tremendous spiritual progress in a human body. So there's a saying, Shiriramadhyam khulu dharma sadhanam. In the practice of spirituality, the body is the first basis of that. The body has to be strong if we want to do spiritual practice, if we want to meditate, if we want to do karma yoga. Body has to be strong. So we take care of it. And it's different if we reach the level of a Ramakrishna who couldn't look after his own body at some points of his life. And then, when that happens, as Sri Krishna says in the Gita, then the divine provides. God provides. When we really genuinely can't provide for ourselves, God provides. But not if we just say, "Oh, I can't do anything," and lay around like a lazy bum. Nothing's going to happen. It's when we're truly unable to look after ourselves that the divine comes forward, as it were, and provides what we need, preserves what we have, and provides what we lack. So, all right, so let's go on. Mix everywhere. Go into the filthiest places. You will never be touched. Like the lotus leaf in water, the water cannot touch it. So will you be. This is vairagnyam, dispassion, the law of karma yoga. So he's coming back again and again to this vairagya. Have you seen a lotus leaf? Who has seen a lotus leaf? Because it's kind of like a nasturtium. Have you seen a nasturtium leaf? They're similarly water repellent. So I guess the leaf itself is covered with very fine hair, I suppose, cilia or something, right? And the surface tension of the water makes it float above the surface of the leaf, and it doesn't wet the leaf. If you put a drop of water on a lotus leaf, it balls up into a little ball, and if you move the leaf, it moves all around, and if you tip it just a little bit, it'll roll right off and roll into the pond. So it's fun. It's fun to play with, to watch the water, drops of water on a lotus leaf. So it doesn't get wet. Yes, water is on it, but it's not actually on it. It's not wet. It's floating over it on the surface because it's a hydrophobic surface. I'm not sure. That would be something to research, the science of why a drop of water doesn't stick to a lotus leaf. But it's often used in Vedanta teachings to describe how do we live in this world. Be like a lotus leaf. Yes, it's in the water. The lotus leaf it's growing out of the lotuses grow in water, and yet the leaves never get wet. How interesting. I have just told you that without non-attachment, there cannot be any yoga. It is the basis of all the yogas, and this is the real meaning of non-attachment. The person who gives up living in houses and wearing fine clothes and eating good food and goes into the desert may be a most attached person. Maybe his or her body is everything to him, and he is struggling for his body. So non-attachment does not mean what you do in your external body, but it is in the mind, where this connecting link of I and mine are not. So I think probably that needs a little editing, where this connecting link of I and mind are not, if we have that non-attachment, if we have that vairagya, it's in the mind, obviously, not. So it's not in externals so much as internals. Though externals are necessary for some, and probably for most people to a certain extent. If you have not this link with the body and with things of the senses, you are free from attachment wherever you be. So it's this identification. This one of our students in the last class said she likes to think of, she doesn't say my body, but she says the body. Instead of saying I'm tired, oh, the body is tired. That's the kind of attitude that we can develop towards this vehicle of ours, this instrument of ours, that it's a body, and right now it's as it were my dwelling. It's my instrument for spiritual practice. It's my instrument for attaining devotion and attaining wisdom and becoming of. It's the instrument through which a service can be performed to the divine in this world. A person may be on a throne and perfectly non-attached. Another may be in rags and still very much attached. So it is always in the mind. That reminds me of the story Sri Ramakrishna used to tell of a monk who had no possessions, only a loincloth. And the loincloth, the traditional loincloth for Indian monks, is called a kopin. And it's actually two strips of cloth. They're just like, probably you've seen a picture of Ramana Maharshi, where he's just wearing a white little cloth around his loins. That's called a kopin. And so monks are given the kopin when they're ordained or initiated into monkhood, into sannyasa. And Sri Ramakrishna tells a story of the monk who had just this loincloth, these two strips of cloth. And naturally he would wash it every day and he would hang it up. I guess probably he had two sets, because he would wash one and hang it, and he'd wear the other one. And but what happened was a mouse started started chewing up his kopin. And so it was a real trouble. So one of the villagers gave him a cat to chase off the rat so that his kopin wouldn't be affected. But what happened is then when he was going out begging for his food, because that's the tradition in India, the villagers will support a monk with the basic bare necessities of life, food and water, and his calling is simply to meditate and teach and be a witness to the divine. And so, but he would go out and then he had to beg some milk for the cat. And one of the villagers said, well, people are not going to want to give you milk for 1 or 2 days is one thing, but to give you milk for your cat every day is too much. You need a cow. So then he got a cow. Well, then he has to feed the cow. How is he going to feed the cow? So he started farming, so he could grow some hay to feed the cow. And then to look after all these things, he needed a wife to look after the household. So then he got married. And then after some time, one of his brother disciples came and found him leading the life of a householder, and with a house and wife and family and cows, and I asked, well, brother, what happened? So, all for the sake of a piece of loincloth. So that's how the attachment to that little piece of cloth, which is nothing, right? It led to this whole entanglement. Like a chain, you just get drawn into it. So this is a story for monks, really, of course. But I think we can all appreciate the idea of non-attachment, which is giving here. That attachment to one thing leads to another, and it leads to another, and gradually we get more and more entangled. So cut it. First, we attain to this non-attachment, and then we come to work. All right, obviously haven't attained that non-attachment yet, but we understand the idea and we come to work. And that's actually why work is, karma yoga actually is the real test of our spiritual progress, of our non-attachment, of how much we have been able to ripen our ego, of how much we have been able to attenuate that idea that, well, I'm right and it has to be done my way. Because we may meditate and we may attain a certain amount of tranquility while meditating and really feel that we're making some serious spiritual progress. And then we work together with some other people. And this is why it's said that one of the greatest austerities in our monasteries is community life. Because we live together with other people who we didn't actually choose them. And in household life also, that's one of the great austerities, is married life, is living with a spouse and constantly having to attenuate our own egos because we have committed to living with a particular person and respecting and honoring them till death do us part and all of that. And similarly, in the monastery, we didn't choose our brothers. We chose the monastery, and we chose to lead a monastic life and a life dedicated to God. We didn't choose the people that we're living with. And it turns out that sometimes it seems like, I'm the only spiritual person here. Look at all these people. They're so unspiritual. Now, when that thought arises, we should really think deeply. If I'm thinking that, probably they're also thinking that. And it turns out that one of our brothers says, when you join the monastery, you begin to realize you're not as spiritual as you thought you were. When you start having conflict with others and arguments and I'm right. And so it's a great practice, karma yoga, working together. We start to realize where we're still attached. And that's what we work on when we do karma yoga. And as long as we recognize it, it's wonderful. It can also be extremely frustrating, but that's the practice. So he says, work incessantly. The karma yoga, now he gets into the paradox. He says, the karma yoga gives a very easy method to help us in giving up this attachment. It is hard to give up. So on the one hand, there's no doubt giving up attachment is difficult. It can be difficult, and yet there's also an easy method. So he's going to give us the two methods of attaining non-attachment: the difficult method and the easy method. I think you can guess what they are. The method according to Jnana Yoga, and the method according to Bhakti Yoga. Here are the two ways of giving up all attachment in karma yoga. The one is for those who do not believe in God or in outside help. Or we can say for those who are staunch non-dualists. So for the staunch non-dualist, there's no God outside of myself. There's only, and so there's only the one infinite existence, and that is what I am in truth, and everything else is a delusion. So for such a practice, for one who follows this path, it's more difficult. So those who do not believe in God or in outside help, they are left to their own devices. They have simply to work with their own will, the power of the mind, that I must be non-attached, and so on. The power of viveka, discrimination. Here he gives the term discrimination, but in other places, Swamiji has also used the term discernment. And this is the term which I prefer to use now because the word discrimination has taken on a completely different meaning. I mean, a negative connotation in society where people, you know, the racism and religionism and sexism and all those things. Is the religionism isn't really a term, is it? But it's this power of the mind to discern between things. So between what is going to help me in spiritual life and what is going to hurt me in spiritual life. What is where to notice, here I am attached, here I am unattached. That power of the mind, which comes from the buddhi, it is said that's the power, that's the portion of our inner organ, our mental faculties, which has that discerning power. And we're using it all the time. Whether we realize it or not, we're constantly discerning differences. And so it's applying that power correctly that helps us in all the yogas, and certainly in karma yoga. I can notice in my own mind, when I'm taking a walk in the morning, and it happens unconsciously, I see a person from a distance, and the first discernment that my mind does is, male or female? Is this a man approaching me or a woman approaching me? I've read somewhere that it's built into our wiring, that the brain itself tries to figure that out. And then we do a second one. Does this person look safe, or does this person look dangerous? Like, is this person sort of walking unsteadily with a funny look and dirty clothes? I might cross the street. If this person is walking with clean clothes, maybe walking their dog, looks safe. Does the dog look safe? What kind of dog is it? It's a pit bull. Well, pit bulls sometimes, but mostly they're friendly, but sometimes. So do I be careful? What do I do? So like that. That's the sort of the automatic process that's always going on. I just thought of that, noticing when I take my morning walk, and that process goes on almost unconsciously. So bringing that to conscious practice, discerning, here I am attached. All right, let it go. Is this action going to help me in spiritual life? Is it going to bring me closer to God? Is it going to bring me closer to freedom? Or is it going to bring me more misery, more attachment? So simply by this power, which is a tremendous power, so this kind of karma yoga, this developing non-attachment, is simply by the power of our own mind. And it's more difficult. It becomes much more easy, says Swami Vivekananda, to those who believe in God. It is very easy. Very easy. Well, easy, he may say so. It's still difficult, but maybe a little less difficult. To those who believe in God, it is very easy. He who gives up the fruits of work unto the Lord and then goes to work, he is never attached, she is never attached to the results, as the lotus leaf in water is never touched by it. So here we bring in the practice of devotion. And we'll find the next couple of pages of the text here, he's going to expand beautifully. This is a beautiful ode to the practice of devotion in karma yoga and how we make everything as an offering, turn everything over to God, only God, only God, only God. And I love this part just a little bit further on, that everything is a sacrifice to the divine. So this becomes possible, really, when God starts becoming real to us. And until then, it's very difficult. When God starts becoming real to us, then when we start developing a relationship with the divine. This is something that Sri Ramakrishna emphasized again and again in his teachings, that God is your own mother, your own father. God is your own. It's not like an imaginary someone. We think, okay, well, God is up there somewhere. God is our very own. He would emphasize that. God is not your divine mother is not your stepmother. She is your very own mother. She is our very own mother. So we develop this relationship. And there are these different attitudes that we have in developing this relationship to God. And that takes work. We cultivate a relationship. Just like if we meet someone and we'd like to make friends with them. What do? Well, we have to talk to this person. We have to call and maybe set up a time to meet and have tea and go out to a movie or go out for a walk and we start to develop that friendship. And how does it work? We work on it. We share things. Nowadays I suppose we text and email and call and share pictures but more important than that, it takes time. We invest time in a relationship. We go out and do stuff. We pick them up from the airport. We sacrifice for them. We give up some of our comfort, and when they're sick, we bring over a bowl of some soup or something, that's what we do when we develop a relationship. So similarly, when we're cultivating a relationship with the divine, we work on it. And there's different ways to do that, but one of the main ways is through prayer. And cultivating a particular attitude. We cultivate a particular attitude towards God, whether we look on God as our friend or as a parent, a father or a mother, or as a child, even our child, to Western sensibilities, it seems a little bit unusual, but actually at Christmas time, Christians look on Jesus as the baby, as a baby Jesus. It doesn't remain, but many Hindus will look on Krishna as the baby Krishna for their whole life. And Krishna is always their baby, and they look after Krishna as their own child. And because the relationship between a mother and a child is so close, and the mother has so much love for a child, ideally, that kind of relationship they take up with God. Or the relationship of a friend or of a servant. And in karma yoga, that relationship of a servant also is very apropos, that I'm God's servant. Whatever I do for God, and I offer it unto God. And so we'll see that attitude developed here. So here he's using the term him, God as him, capital H. When it's written down, of course, he's talking, so there's no capital letters when you're talking. Give up all works unto the Lord. Whatever you do is for him. Whatever you see, feel, hear is for him. Not only what we do, even what we experience, even what we take in, what we see, what we hear, even that, Swamiji is saying, is an offering to God. Let the results go to him. Whatever work you do, when you do any good work, do not take any praise to yourself. It is his. Give up the fruits unto him. The grandest works that you do in your life, never think that you will receive the benefits thereof, or that you have done a good work. No. It is his, and thus the evil works will also go away when you do not take up the result of good works. That's an interesting idea. Even when we don't take to ourselves the results of the good work we've done, when we don't claim it as our own, when we just simply make it an offering, I've just done it for God, then also the evil works will also go away. What does he mean? We have this tendency to, the more we become unattached, the more we develop this attitude of being an instrument in the hands of the divine, the less likely it is for us to do a negative action. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the expert dancer never takes a false step, never misses a step. When we become illumined with, enlightened, when we realize our true nature, it's impossible for us to do any harmful act because that lower self which could do that has been completely attenuated, completely ripened, completely filled with divine light. Stand aside and think that you are the servant obeying the master, and that every impulse comes from him every moment. Whatever thou worshipest, whatever thou perceivest, whatever thou doest, give up all that unto him and be at rest. I'm just thinking of the Gita verse because it doesn't, he's expanded it, whatever you perceive. Yat karoshi, yadashnasi, yad juhoshi, tadasi, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva madarpanam. This is the famous verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Whatever you do, Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, whatever you do, yat karoshi, yadashnasi, whatever you eat, yad juhoshi, whatever you offer in sacrifice, yad juhoshi dadasi, yat, whatever you give in charity, yat tapasyasi, whatever spiritual practices you do that as an offering unto me. So he is developing this master-servant relationship with Arjuna and saying, whatever you do, even your spiritual practice, whatever you eat, whatever you take in, and Swami Vivekananda is extending it here beautifully at one further level, whatever you perceive even whatever thou perceivest, whatever thou doest, give up all that unto him and be at rest. Be at peace, perfect peace with yourself, and give up your whole body and mind and everything unto him, eternal sacrifice. In old times, the sacrifice was pouring oblations into the fire. Make that one great sacrifice day and night. When you are passing through the streets, let the mind make the sacrifice. In search of wealth, in this world, thou art the only wealth I have found. I sacrifice myself unto thee. In search of someone to be loved, thou art the only one beloved I have found. I sacrifice myself unto thee. Repeat that day and night. Nothing for me, no matter good, bad, or indifferent. I do not care. I sacrifice all to thee. Repeat that day and night until it becomes a habit, until it gets into the blood, the nerves, the brain, and the whole body is every moment saying it. Then go out anywhere, nothing will touch you. So this is the kind of, when he gets inspired like this, well, the only thing to do is just to read it again and again. Swami Vivekananda would do this. Sister Nivedita points out that once she was sitting in a carriage with Swami Vivekananda. I think they were sitting back to back. It was some kind of carriage where there was, and so she could hear him whispering under his breath some kind of mantra, constantly saying, constantly over and over again, repeating day again and again. So this is spiritual life. It's developing this to convince ourselves to actually make this our own. We have to repeat it again and again. We take up this idea and we remind ourselves again and again. So like Sri Ramakrishna's mantra, which he gives in the story of the calf, it finally comes down to Naham, Naham, Tuhu, Tuhu. Not I, but thou, thou. Not I, but thou, thou. It reminds me of there's an incident in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, recorded in the Gospel, where I think it's Mahimacharan, one of the devotees who follows the path of jnana. He chants the Nirvana Shatkam, which we chant here on Monday mornings, which is Shankaracharya's, the 6 verses on Nirvana, where he says, I am not this, I am not this, I am not that, I am not that, I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the senses, I am not the pranas. I am Chidananda Rupa, Shivoham, Shivoham. I am existent, I am infinite existence and consciousness and bliss. I am consciousness and bliss. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. And interestingly, when he was chanting this, Mahimacharan was chanting this in Sri Ramakrishna's presence. The room is full of devotees. And every time after Mahimacharan said, Shivoham, Shivoham, Sri Ramakrishna would say, Naham, Naham, Tuhu, Tuhu. Not I, but thou, thou. He would inject that because he felt that for most people, all right, he said, you know this. This is the highest conclusion of the Vedanta philosophers, that your true nature is infinite consciousness and bliss. But for us, we add devotion to it. We add the practice of devotion. We still have a strong body consciousness. We still feel we are bodies. So, and as long as we feel we are bodies, as long as we feel we are separate from God, even a little bit, then God is very real. And the proper attitude Sri Ramakrishna used to feel is the attitude of devotion. Not I, but thou, thou. But it also becomes a monistic experience, because the thou, when we start seeing thou, when everything is thou, thou, we start seeing thou in everything, including ourselves, and then all becomes thou, all becomes the divine, seeing the divine in everything. So he instructs us, repeat that day and night until it becomes a habit. Repeat it day and night. Nothing for me, no matter good, bad, or indifferent. I do not care. I sacrifice all to thee. And I like to condense that into Naham, Naham, Tuhu, Tuhu, Sri Ramakrishna's mantra. Which I noticed we visited the Ananda Ashrama in La Crescenta the other day, which is a beautiful ashrama founded by Swami Paramananda, one of the monks of our order. And kind of tragically, after he died, that group broke away from our order. So it's a separate organization running on practically identical lines, but not part of our order. So but it's also dedicated to Vedanta and Sri Ramakrishna. And in the windows, they have various of the temple, they have all these different religions, the different religions represented by some famous building in the stained glass, different holy buildings in the main part of the temple. And in the main part of the temple at eye level are these different niches, each dedicated to a different religion. And in the main shrine, there are 2 stained glass windows. And in one of them, it gives the Sanskrit dictum, Tattvamasi, that thou art. The Upanishadic dictum, one of the 4 Mahavakyas, Tattvamasi, that thou art. And in the other one, in Bengali script, is given Sri Ramakrishna's Mahavakya, as it were, his dictum, Naham, Naham, Tuhu, Tuhu. So it's interesting. On the left side, it says Tattvamasi. On the right side, Naham, Naham, Tuhu, Tuhu. So Swami Paramananda had this inspiration to put both of these dicta in the windows of the main sanctum there in the temple. If you've never been, it's worth a visit. It's exquisitely beautiful and peaceful. And temple is a powerful temple dedicated to Sri Ramakrishna and the Divine Mother of the Universe, Mother Kali. So, okay, I'll finish this paragraph. Repeat that day and night until it becomes a habit, until it gets into the blood, the nerves, the brain, and the whole body is every moment saying it. Then go out anywhere. Nothing will touch you. Go into the midst of the battlefield with roaring cannon and the din of war, and you will be free and at peace. Let shots fly around your head. I sacrifice myself to thee. All right, so that's probably a great place to stop. Let me mark the stopping point here. Because the next section is going to be a wonderful contrast with his first class. first class, second class for beginners. The second class for beginners is what is duty. And in that class, which was delivered on the Friday, December 20, 1895, he talks about duty and how in Karma Yoga we do our duty disinterestedly. We simply do it as a duty. But now, in this class, he comes to a different place where he says, duty is, he says, duty is the midday summer sun which scorches the innermost soul of humankind. And duty is a huge mistake. We do all kinds of work and call it karma yoga, and we say it's my duty. And it's not duty. It's simply, we're working out of desire, we're working out of ignorance, and we're calling it duty. So he's, in this next section, he's going to deconstruct our idea of duty. First, he has given us this idea of duty as a part of karma yoga, and then he breaks it down and says, actually, no, duty is, it's a mistake to think that we work for duty. Duty is a misnomer. We are free, be free, don't work out of duty. That's slavery. But we'll save that for next time. Are there any comments, questions?
There's an online question.
Okay.
The comment and then the question into it. This is our problem, Swamiji. As long as we are here, we feel, and it says versus spiritual, but when we go into the world, a lot of that vaporizes. How do we keep up with spiritualism at all times?
Wait, so when we feel spirit, wait, what did you say? In quotes, did you say, or what?
That is our problem, Swamiji. As long as we are here, we feel, it says we feel, and this is the letter V, so I don't know how to interpret that.
Feel V.
Feel, then the letter V, spiritual.
V, spiritual, okay. We feel spiritual, okay, I got it.
Yep.
So
Feel very spiritual.
we feel very spiritual when we're sitting in the temple, and then we go into the
world, and then
suddenly it all goes out
vaporizes. So how do we maintain this focus? How do we maintain this this awareness?
Yes, right. It's by practice. That's the only. Actually, it's not. It's actually easy, and yet it's not easy because it's practice, and that's why we in our monasteries we have this routine built in that we come back to the shrine and meditate every day, same time. We have at least morning and evening, we have meditation here, and we don't miss it. It's very rare that we miss it. And if we have to miss it for some reason, we feel bad, right? Sometimes we have to miss it because maybe I'm the supper cook today, so I have to miss my evening meditation. If I'm really conscientious, I'll do it later, or I'll do a little meditation before. But we have that first thing in the morning, and sort of towards the end of the day, again, meditation. That's really important for maintaining it, because we develop a certain equanimity in meditation. We carry that equanimity with us. It's easier to remain, to not get so entangled in things at the office or at the workplace, whatever our workplace may be. I shouldn't say office, because nowadays and always many workplaces are not offices, and many of the workplaces that I experienced before I joined the monastery were not offices. Whether it's a field, a farm field, or working in the street, digging ditches to fix the sewers, or wherever we may be, we're going to face working with people. And it's very rare that we work completely alone. And so karma yoga is the art also of learning to work with people. And the more we develop that equanimity in our meditation, and then we're faced with something, so are we going to let that destroy our equanimity, or do we realize, if I hold myself a little back, all right, maybe it doesn't matter so much if we paint the door blue and not red. I want to paint it red, but these people want to. all right, let it be painted blue. I won't make a big fuss about this. And what happens? I maintain my equanimity. I'm carrying that spirituality a little bit more, isn't it? Can you think of any other examples?
One example that comes to mind is in a comic that I saw several years ago. And the Buddhist was basically telling a young man, if you think you're spiritual, spend the weekend with your family at the holidays.
That's true. I agree. Yes, it brings up all those old samskaras, the old habits we had as children, and all of that, and the conflicts we had with our siblings as kids, and then we grow up and we're no longer living with our siblings, we're living with friends or our new families, and then we go back home for the holidays, and it brings up all these old tendencies. So it's a great practice to just show how far have we come. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Swami. Kind of a corollary to that particular question. If you're with other people who are not into that consistent practice, do you, I don't usually include them, but some may ask questions, what am I doing? Or others will just pass it off. You just keep consistent with it, and then when whatever else that you're doing with them continues, how do you maintain that? I mean, does it can it be like a continuous chanting of the mantra, or is it can it be some other way, like just keeping God's name in your heart, or how else would you do?
I think you answered it. You answered your own question. I'm not sure I fully understand your idea of. You mean that in practical life, in our daily lives, we have to mix with people who are not spiritual seekers. One thing that I find happens for many spiritual seekers, and it certainly happened to me, is as my seeking became more intense, gradually those relationships I had with people who were not seekers, if they didn't come along with me, if they weren't also seekers, those relationships kind of dried up. Naturally. It wasn't like a painful, okay, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. It was just like, I'm no longer interested in going to see the kind of movies you want to see. And so, the relationship kind of dies away. The friends that I had in college, they're not my friends now. When we become seekers, gradually we find new friends who are also seekers. And we find a community of people who are also seeking. So there's some common understanding. But true, especially if we have jobs in society, we will have a job with other people who are not seekers, no doubt about it. But it's also interesting, when we become seekers, we draw other seekers to ourselves, and we are drawn to other seekers, and we find them. And they may not be seeking in our path. They may not be coming to the Vedanta Society. They may be Christians, or they may be Muslims, or spiritual but not religious, but they're also seekers. And we start to connect with those people. There's a saying, he who sups with the devil must have a long spoon. So, yes, when in our interactions with people, we may have to interact also with people who are even downright unspiritual, still selfish or wicked, have wicked tendencies. Not that anybody is truly wicked, but have wicked tendencies. We need to protect ourselves, obviously, maintain distance. Sri Ramakrishna says, you may have to agree to what, if there's a drunkard, you may have to agree to what he says, even if you don't actually agree with it, because otherwise he may abuse you and it may turn ugly. So we have to engage that discernment, that power of discernment, to know, when faced with a wicked someone, we may just have to salute from a distance as best we can, and as far as possible, just protect ourselves. But the mantra, as you said, those of us who have the practice of chanting God's name know that it's a profoundly powerful practice for maintaining that spiritual awareness throughout the day. Any other questions, comments? Anything more online that we need to address?
I understood what you said, Swami. Thank you so much. It was very insightful. But what if someone were to see the oneness in all? How can there be the discernment there if there is no other but one?
God in the form of the story of the Mahut Narayana. Sri Ramakrishna's story, do you know the story? Of the Mahut is the one who rides the elephant and guides it when elephants have been tamed and employed. They are used in various work in tropical countries where elephants live. And the Mahut is shouting, "Get out of the way, get a mad elephant, get out of the way." And that mad elephant, he's lost control of the elephant. So he's basically cautioning everyone, get out of the way, there's a mad elephant. You could be killed or severely injured. And the disciple of the guru had told the disciple, God dwells in all beings. So he looked on the elephant as Narayana, and he started praying and chanting hymns in praise of the elephant, because the elephant was God after all. And the elephant came and grabbed him and threw him aside and severely injured him. And then he was brought back to the guru and he revived, and then they asked, well, why didn't you get out of the way? Well, no, with the guru, you have told us that everything is God, that the elephant is also God. And the guru said, yes, you fool, but isn't the Mahut, the man who's telling you to run, isn't he also God? So Sri Ramakrishna would say, salute the tiger God from a distance. So yes, now for one who has actually attained that consciousness at all times, directly perceiving, not imagining, not just believing, but actually directly perceiving that all are God, for such a person, then that kind of discernment is no longer necessary, and that, as we talked about in the beginning of the class, then the divine comes and protects that person. God himself comes and protects, Divine Mother comes and protects such a person who is completely surrendered to the divine. So.
We see instances like, for example, sage Vashishta and Vishvamitra, who was this very powerful king, and he was walking and found Vashishta's ashram, and then he saw so much peace, and he even found lions and tigers who were walking with peace and ease. And so he was very surprised, and it was because of Vashishta's frequency.
That's true.
So I think in those cases, very special, those cases, I think that discernment is no longer needed, not because of but because it is not needed, because the tigers and the lions feel love towards Vashishta, and even though they are tigers or elephants or cobras, they actually feel love towards someone like...
That's true. Powerful, but someone who has attained to that level of spirituality certainly exerts a sphere of influence around him or herself. So I suggest that we close here with just a couple of minutes of silence, so we can reflect a little on the teachings we have received from Swamiji, and then we'll close with a chant. asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityormamritangamaya aviravirma edhi rudrayate dakshinam mukham tena mam pahi nityam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. From the unreal, lead us to the real. From darkness, lead us unto light. From death, lead us to immortality. Reach us through and through ourselves, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on Karma Yoga and to dive a little deeper into this beautiful text.